My name is DiVito, and I'm an associate professor at the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences.
My name is René Bohnsack, and I'm assistant professor for strategy and innovation at Católica Lisbon. Basically, at the time, Laurie and myself, we were working on a practice project together, and we were working with sustainable entrepreneurs in the fashion industry. And one of the things that we found is that often these entrepreneurs, they kind of struggled in making decisions when they were scaling up. So imagine there was like a company or an entrepreneur whose products really took off, and then suddenly being sustainable meant that they had to take trade-offs or make trade-offs in the scaling up process between being economic goals or social goals or environmental goals.
We sampled 24 firms and we sent them a questionnaire about their sustainability orientation and their entrepreneurial orientation. And we, from there, also held very in-depth interviews to understand their struggles better. And we saw three distinct types of decision-making profiles. And we saw that entrepreneurs could be very hyper-focused, and we call this the singular decision-making profile, be very hyper-focused on a sustainability dimension, such as social dimension. And they would use a particular type of logic in making their trade-offs. And for that particular decision-making profile, it's a nested logic. So if we're saying that they're hyper-focused on the social dimension, then that social dimension had dominance and priority over the other two dimensions. That's a nested decision-making logic. And we saw also, as far as the entrepreneurship or entrepreneurial orientation that coincides with that they were very much a risk taker. So they were, we saw that in the sense that they were more vulnerable in their enterprise, that they accepted slower growth and also lower profits in order to stay true, say, to their sustainability focus on the social dimension. Personal interest, I suppose, is really to see how sustainability becomes more embedded in the entrepreneurial process. That was really what motivated us in the beginning to look at this, and I think that still motivates me in my research that continues after this, and also René, is to really see how these sustainability dimensions of being socially, environmentally, and economically responsible becomes much more a part of the business process, instead of just sort of maybe an afterthought.
And we wanted to also, to some extent, find out or kind of unearth that there's this black and white perspective on sustainability. Either you are sustainable or you're not. And we thought well, maybe there is also something in between, right? And humans have to make trade-offs, and that's okay. And we wanted to understand how entrepreneurs do that in the sustainability area. There's let's say, three implications that we find very interesting for practice. Number one, it kind of shows that it's okay to make trade-offs, right? And it's just human to make trade-offs. And so that's one thing that we really show with this framework and with this study. Second, it kind of also gives you a compass. Basically, once you know, you are for instance, a singular decision-making type, it helps you for future decisions, saying look, this is what I do, and that's my decision-making type, and I just follow this path. Right? And third, it's also very interesting for investors. For investors, really, for them to scan and to categorize sustainable entrepreneurs and saying look, these are truly or fully sustainable. These are kind of in the middle, and they make trade-offs. And that, of course, in light of the importance or increasing importance of responsible management.
I think that in what we studied with the sustainable fashion firms, we see that, especially if we're looking at materials, a lot of our firms were experimenting with other kinds of materials. So for instance, instead of using a full cotton blend, perhaps there's a bit of bamboo mixed in it as a way of being more environmentally sustainable and reducing water use, or different kinds of sustainability impacts that could be a benefit from using bamboo. And so they would experiment with this, and then they would realize that actually the durability of using bamboo is not quite as long as using cotton. And so they would make a trade-off there, saying, okay, well, these are the kinds of trade-offs that they face actually, is which is the best option that they can choose and still sort of remain true to their values of being more environmentally responsible. And they wouldn't make that trade-off. They would actually choose to have quality for the most part in order to, well, that's going into another dimension of, say, the economic dimension of really making sure that their business remains viable and that they don't lose customers because of making the wrong kind of decision that may be more environmentally friendly, but not as economically responsible.